What's up, everybody? I'm going to do this one more time here. My last video maybe for the day. It's Saturday, so I always make a few because I can't do it in the work week. I'm busy. This book that I've been reading, Ethics Theory and Contemporary Issues. I've had it for a long time, and I started reading the first chapter today, and I kind of wanted to throw in this little idea, what is ethics? And read just the first couple pages of this book, because it came to me in a time when synchronicity brought it to me, when I needed it, exactly when I needed it. And I think that if I'd read this book a year ago, I would have gained from it, but not as much as I do now. And I have delved into it a little bit here and there, but I didn't get into philosophy until about 5 years ago. Maybe a little less. I was always into philosophizing, but I didn't get into philosophers and start studying others and the research of others because, well, people are stubborn. They want to figure it out on their own. Sometimes when we put down our minds and pick up a book, we learn from others things that they've already been through that we share in common. So the question is, what is ethics? And they're talking about, can it be taught? Because in ancient schools, ethics was part of schooling, and it still is in a lot of situations. A lot of folks aren't aware that, the term university and college, college is where you go to learn a trade. College was designed to be a trade school. University was designed to be a place where you learn about universal laws, about truth. Math, history, science, philosophy, ethics. Those are all courses that, everyone would take. That was pretty standard in the old days, but we've lost our ethical. So I just wanted to read, I kind of have it, the important parts encased here, so I'll just take another bong hit before I read it so I can fuck up my words. By the way, this is a Blue Dream, or Dream Queen? Can't remember, it's one or the other. It's funny, I broke the stem the other day, and so it's just snapped in half, but like it smashed the bowl, and it got stuck in there, it won't come out. I know how tacky, right? I'm reading about philosophy and ethics, and I'm sitting here taking bong hits on my video. You too, kids, can learn about ethics. Sometimes I feel like I'm full of shit, or I sound like I'm full of shit, but I'm just a dude. Alright. Ethics is a branch of philosophy. It is also called moral philosophy. Although not everyone agrees about what philosophy is, I suggest that we think of it as a discipline or study in which we ask and attempt to answer foundational questions about key areas and matters of human life and experience. Some philosophers, such as Plato and Kant, have tried to do this systematically by interrelating their philosophical views in many areas. According to Alfred North Whitehead, speculative philosophy is the endeavor to frame a coherent, logical, necessary system of general ideas in terms of which every element of our experience can be interpreted. Others believe that philosophers today must work at problems piecemeal, focusing on one particular issue at a time. For instance, some might analyze the meaning of the phrase, to know, while others might work on the morality of lying. Which is why I found this so fascinating, because I was getting ready to write my book, and I was going to write it about lying, and lie to me, and accepting lies that you want to accept. I just found that was why one of the synchronicities. Sorry, I'll go on. There are many areas of philosophical investigation. In aesthetics, or philosophy of art, philosophers ask questions not about how to interpret a certain novel or painting, but basic or foundational questions such as, what kinds of things do or should count as art? Rocks arranged in a certain way, for example. Is what makes something an object of aesthetic interest its emotional expressiveness, or its peculiar formal nature, or its ability to show us certain truths that cannot be described? And a side note, I've just got discussed with Art Rant about this, and this is why I found this really interesting, because we've talked about what is art. And we kind of had a discussion about weekend warriors and artists that aren't really artists. And this explains verbally kind of how I feel about it. Like, philosophy doesn't say one thing's art or another, it asks, what is art? Is it based on the expression? And that's exactly what I was trying to say. Is like, when the love's there, is it art? And of course, there's contemporary art. There's many different forms of art. But I'll go on anyway. I just thought that was cool, because this ties into like everybody that I've talked to on YouTube, all the different videos that we've discussed and issues. But that's just art, is in the eye of the beholder, or is it formation? In philosophy of science, philosophers ask not about the structure or composition of some chemical or biological material, but about such matters as whether scientific knowledge gives us reality as it is, or whether there is progress in science, and what is the nature of the scientific method, which is just the trip I've been on lately. I just think that's phenomenal. Philosophers of law seek to understand the nature of law itself, the source of its authority, the nature of legal interpretation, and the basis of legal responsibility. In philosophy of knowledge, called epistemology, we try to answer questions about how or whether our language or concepts fit the world, how we can have a mental grasp, so to speak, of physical nature, and what it is to know something rather than just believe it. In each of these cases, philosophers ask foundational questions about what is most basic to or presupposed in a particular area. This is also true of moral philosophy. Cool stuff. I mean, it's so true. I mean, these are the questions that you try to answer in ethics and philosophy of ethics. And I guess that's kind of where I lean, is what is right, what's wrong. And this really deals with these issues. I'll go on. I skipped a part here, and then I'll go to the next part. This is called Ethics and Reasons. Ethics does ask very good general questions about the nature of the good life, but it also aims to help us determine what is the right or better thing to do in particular situations. Thus, it should help us determine whether or not Mr. Milligan was justified in lying in order to get medical help for his friend. If I said that it was wrong for him to lie, then I would be expected to give reasons for that position. I may argue that the ability to trust other people's word is so important for our social life that people ought to always tell the truth, even if it means that we cannot do the good that we might otherwise be able to do. Alternatively, I might reason that while honesty is desirable, in this case my friend's life would take precedence. I could be challenged on my conclusion, and then I would have to give further reasons. Another example would be as if I said that affirmative action is unjustified. I should give reasons for this conclusion. It will not be acceptable for me to respond that this is just the way I feel. If I have some intuitive negative response to preferential treatment forms of affirmative action, I will be expected to delve deeper and to determine if there are some reasons for this attitude. Perhaps I have experienced the bad results of such programs, or I may believe that giving preference in hiring or school admissions on the basis of race or sex is unfair. In either case, I will also be expected to push the matter further and explain why it is unfair, or even what constitutes fairness and unfairness. And please take that one to heart. A lot of folks out there are doing exactly that. They're pushing issues, and then when you question them on the issues that they believe, they just call you an ignorant or a fool, and then they go on. And when you say, hey, could you please expound on your information, they just ignore you. And this is very prevalent on YouTube and everywhere else on the internet. Somebody could post a big long comment explaining, very carefully, the fundamentals about being a good person and this and that. And then they might mention one thing about, having faith or something. You're not even saying anything about God, and then the other person will say, fuck you and your fake God. Now that's just a harsh comment. But let's say somebody makes a comment about, the fact that something doesn't exist, and a person says you're just an idiot. Of course, angels exist, right? Of course, angels exist. Then the other person is going to say, okay, may I ask for your evidence? And the person will say, oh, well, you can Google it. Well, that doesn't cut it anymore. You know, people want specific information. You can Google anything you want to find. And you can also Google against it and get the same results on the opposite end of the spectrum. I mean, that's well known. So, you know, but studies, just standard studies, you have to ask yourself so many questions. Are they biased? Were these scientists funded by someone who wants certain results? You know, if they're studying medicine and they're saying it's good for you, right? The scientific method, we've approved all these medicines that are supposedly okay. But we know they're not. They're paid for by Big Pharma. So where's the morality lie? Is it the scientist's responsibility to be truthful? What about a whistleblower on a company? That's another issue. So anyway, a person has to be able to identify why they believe what they believe. And that goes for religious folks too. If you want to believe in Jesus, that's fine. But you have to have more than just saying what other people have said in the past about, like, it's in the Bible. You know, that just doesn't work anymore. We need more information than that. You know, this is a new world. So, I'll go on and finish this. To be required to give reasons and make arguments to justify one's moral conclusion is essential to the moral enterprise and to doing ethics. However, this does not mean that making ethical judgments is and must be purely rational. We might be tempted to think that in order to make good moral judgments, we must be objective and not let our feelings or emotions enter into our decision-making. Yet, this assumes that feelings always get in the way of making good judgments. Sometimes this is surely true, as when we are overcome by anger or jealousy or fear and cannot think clearly. Bias and prejudice may stem from such strong feelings. We think prejudice is wrong because it prevents us from judging rightly. But emotions can often aid good decision-making. We may, for example, simply feel the injustice of a certain situation or the wrongness of someone's suffering. Furthermore, our caring about some issue or person may in fact direct us to think about the ethical issues involved. However, some explanation of why we hold a certain moral position is required. Not to give an explanation, but to simply say X is just wrong, or simply to have strong feelings or convictions about X is not sufficient. Good stuff right there. Good stuff right there. I mean, that's exactly how I feel. You cannot just say something is true or is not true without providing the evidence. At the same time, you can't just assume because you have evidence that supports you that the evidence that's against it is wrong. And this seems to be the issue. And that's why I'm into morality, and that's why ethics are so important. I was talking about evil. Does it exist? I don't know, but in one side or another, there's something going on with people's issues and morality that has to be based on, I don't know. I'm just going to read the last one. Can ethics be taught? It would be interesting to know just why some colleges and universities require that their students take a course in ethics. Does this requirement rely on a belief that ethics or moral philosophy is designed to make people good and is capable of doing that? Flip the page. When asked about this, some of the students mentioned earlier said that ethics could be taught, but some people do not learn the lessons well. Others believed that it could not be taught because one's ethical views are a matter of personal choice. I personally think it's both. I think some people just don't want to learn the truth, so they shut out ethics altogether because it requires them to give up some of their personal greed and their ambition in order to sacrifice for the greater good. Now, a lot of people say love is the answer. Love is not the answer. Love is a path to the answer. And the answer is service. Service to man. Service to mankind. Service to the world. Service to the universe. That's what we're here to do. Period. Doesn't matter creationist, atheist, black, white, male, female. We're all here to serve each other. That's it. Period. So, I'll finish here. Others believe that it cannot be taught because ethical views are a matter of personal choice. The ancient Greek philosopher Plato thought that ethics could be taught. He wrote that all evil is ignorance. That's my favorite line. In other words, the only reason we do what is wrong is because we do not know it is wrong, or do not believe it is wrong. If we come to believe that something is right, however, it should then follow that we will necessarily do it. Now, we are free to disagree with Plato by appealing to our own experience. If I know that I should not have that second piece of pie, does this mean I will not eat the second piece? Never? Plato might attempt to convince us that he is right by examining or clarifying what he means by the phrase to know. If we were really convinced with our whole heart and mind, so to speak, that something is wrong, then we might be very likely, if not determined, not to do it. However, whether ethics courses should attempt to convince students of such things is surely debatable. Most, if not all, moral philosophers think that ethics, or a course on ethics, should do a number of other things. It should help students understand the nature of an ethical problem. It should help them think critically about ethical matters by providing them with certain conceptual tools and skills. It should enable them to form and critically analyze ethical arguments. It is up to the individual to use these skills to reason about ethical matters. A study of ethics should also lead students to be respectful of opposing views. Tolerance, people. Tolerance. For it requires them to carefully analyze the arguments that support views contrary to their own. It also provides opportunities to consider the reasonableness of at least some of our viewpoints they previously may have not considered. And that's all I've done, I think, so far. I was just trying to get some of the ones outlined that were good. It's a pretty big book. I just started it. Putting stuff out there that I just can't, I mean, philosophy, moral values, ethics, all this crap, it just seems so snooty almost to some people. And it used to me too, until now I understand it. I had a boss one time that was, he was a Freemason, actually. He was a member of the Mason Lodge up here. And he was a really nice guy, but he was just kind of, I called him the preener. He was always preening his hands and always staying clean. This old guy, kind of hunched, and he had really high values, really strong ethics. Always packed his own lunch, but at the same time, he was kind of, obviously had some issues. He was kind of a dick. He acted like a jerk to people. But the whole idea was that since he was a Freemason, I know that a lot of Freemasons uphold certain values. And I was thinking about how a lot of them think that they're doing everything right, but they treat their wives like shit, or their kids. They're missing values out of ignorance, being unaware of the facts of what's really important. Well, I'm serving man, but I'm not serving my kids. I mean, it takes all the information, not just some of it. You can't develop values based on just being a member of a group, or just being someone who knows what is right. You have to know all the facts. So, so many people think that what they're doing is correct. And in the end, you either have to say, I was wrong, or you continue along that same path and try to justify it. And like it said, you have to be able to prove your point. You have to have something behind it. You can't just say, this is wrong, or this exists, or this doesn't exist. But you could go on, back and forth. The double negatives. You can't prove something exists. No, you can't prove something doesn't exist either. Everything's relative. Who cares? It's irrelevant. None of that the little detailed stuff matters. It's always the details that keep us off the bigger picture of what's going on. I know a lot of people say that there are people that are keeping us distracted with little things in order to keep our minds off of the big stuff that's going on in the world, like them, I don't see that anymore. I see it as us distracting ourselves from what's going on in the world. Media provides us what we want. No, the way I see it is at one time or another, commercials, television, all that is designed not to program people, but to follow people's already existing mental programming. There are exceptions to the rule, but my point being that for the most part, all this junk we've demanded, and we try to morally justify it by saying, well, it's okay because we need this to do this or to move forward. And it's almost silly because we see society trying to morally justify all kinds of stupid stuff. Like, I see it. I see change. And it's because of this. The iPhone came out and the HTC came out. They're incredible and they're droids and stuff. For a while there, everybody was going crazy. Everybody wanted smartphones. Now I've talked to more than a few people who are just sick of it. I'm one of them. I just want a regular phone back. The excitement's over. The novelty of the technological age is starting to wane, at least with the intensity that it had. People will still always want cool new technology. But a lot of folks have finally realized that at the pinnacle of having every single song of theirs on a little tiny device that big, they still can't find a tune they want to listen to. But if you got a CD in your old Walkman, you were always happy. We're seeking to fill this void, and we can't do it with materials. We have to do it with awareness of ethics and obligation to serve each other. That does sound corny, but it's the truth. And I feel it in my heart. And I call it my heart mind because the heart thinks. And it's not just speculation. The heart helps you to decide. And it helps your body to function. Your mind is the slayer of the real, and it's just part of the little detail. Think of your mind as just the processor. All the rest of the computer system is elsewhere. And I know my views are a little extreme to some people. To others, they're probably like, yeah, totally. I know what you're talking about. But I don't expect anyone to have listened to this whole video and agree with me. And that's where I'm at in life. I would hope no one agrees with me 100%. Because if they do, then we're not learning from each other. And we need to make each other think. So, that's my view on ethics. And I'm going to keep working to be the best person I can. And try to leave the smallest impact of negativity and leave the highest positive impact when I go. Because you can choose to leave energy. Everyone's going to leave something, a footprint. And whether yours is positive or negative is totally up to you. But I hope you make the choice to be aware of yourself, develop ethics, and realize that we're all faulty humans doing the best we can. Love y'all.